and welcome to Homestudies e-learning for Cambridge English Advanced. This is a C1 qualification that shows you have the language skills that employers and universities are looking for. My name is Sarah and I'm going to take you through how to learn and use idioms effectively. So, first of all, you probably know what an idiom is, but in case you don't, let's just clarify what it means. So an idiom is an expression where it's not possible to work out the meaning of it from the sum of its parts. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, one of my friends told me that he'd bitten the bullet and decided to go on a flying phobia course. Bite the bullet, what does that mean? We know the individual words, bite and bullet, but what does the idiom mean? Well, with idioms, unless you know them, it's impossible to work out the meaning from the expression alone. So in fact, this idiom means to make yourself do something that you really don't want to do. So in my example, you might have been able to work out the meaning from the context. And actually, context is really important when you encounter new idioms. It can help you to deduce the meaning. So why do you need to learn idioms? Well, they're really common in English. Native speakers use them every day, both in speaking and in writing. That means that you need to know a wide range of idioms in order to be able to listen and read effectively. And that's without even considering you using them yourself in your speaking and your writing. So the fact is that if you want to achieve C1 level, you're going to have to bite the bullet and face idioms. The good thing about idioms is that they're actually quite interesting, even fun to learn. So let's get started then, shall we? I'll see you in the first video.
Hello and welcome to Homestudies e-learning for Advanced. Thanks for joining us. In this video, we'll take a look at idioms part 1. We're going to practice identifying, defining and using frequently used idioms in English. The ability to use idioms like a native speaker is important for your exam, but it's also a good goal to have in real life too. Before you get started, it's a good idea to print out the PDF handout of this unit so you can easily make notes and underline key information during the tasks. Or, if you don't have a printer, you can download it to a different device and use a highlighting tool for note-taking. You may have heard people saying that English is an idiomatic language, which means that in English we use a lot of idioms. In my opinion, that's certainly true. But what does that mean? What exactly is an idiom? Well, put simply, idioms are expressions consisting of two or more words commonly used together in a particular or set order to convey a specific meaning. These expressions are often used in colloquial or informal speech. Unfortunately, however, and this is very important, simply understanding the individual words which make up the phrase does not ensure that you will be able to understand the phrase in its entirety. Let's look at a few examples. So, on a wet, stormy day, I want to remind my colleague to take his umbrella or brolly with him because it's raining cats and dogs. Clearly, most people understand the words rain, cats and dogs, but surely this doesn't mean that cats and dogs are literally falling from the sky. In fact, it just means that it's raining really heavily. This example demonstrates a really important feature of idioms, which is that the meaning of an idiom often can't be understood from the meanings of the individual words contained within the expression. This is part of what makes learning idioms challenging. Let's look at another example. Suppose that your British colleague is telling you about a work project and says that the project has gone pear-shaped. Is he talking about fruit? No. To go pear-shaped is an idiom which means to go badly. So your colleague is having problems with his project. Let's look at one more example. Your cousin tells you that winning his next football match should be a piece of cake. What does it mean? He clearly isn't talking about baking. Again, you can't deduce the meaning of the idiom from the meaning of the individual words. What your cousin's saying is that it should be really easy for his team to win. Many learners are frightened of idioms and therefore actively try to avoid them. If you want to be an advanced speaker of English, you can't do this. As I said right at the beginning, English is an idiomatic language. So, why should you take the trouble to learn? The first reason is simply to allow you to express yourself fully. It's often the case that the most effective way to express what you want to say is by using a commonly used idiom. They also often add colour and humour to your speech. Secondly, idioms are so common in English that if you don't practice using them, your English will never begin to approach that of a native speaker. Thirdly, a lack of awareness of common idioms will really impede your reading and listening skills. Even if you don't feel confident using many idioms actively, you need to be able to recognise and understand them when you hear and see them. Last but not least, if you're planning to take any of the advanced exams, all of the examining bodies expect you to be able to use and understand idioms at higher levels. So, as you'll see, there are many important reasons why learning idioms is essential. You're probably familiar with the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference. This is the scale that describes what language learners are able to do at different levels. The CEFR explicitly mentions what language learners are expected to be able to do with idioms at C1 level, that is, the level of the advanced exam. It states that advanced learners will be able to understand a wide range of idioms. So this shows that at this level, you need to work on expanding your knowledge of idioms. The CEFR also mentions two specific contexts where you'll need to understand a lot of idiomatic language. That is, when watching films and in private correspondence. So that means emails and letters. Alright, so now a task for you to practice identifying idioms. Look at this paragraph and highlight or underline all the idioms you can find. There are 5 in total. Let's see how many you can identify. Okay, so pause the video and press play when you're ready. Okay, so let's check the answers. The 5 idioms in the text are highlighted in green. Compare these with your answers and see how many you got right. Did you get them all right? You might not know the meaning of all of these, so we'll have a look at the definitions on the next page. Okay, so now let's think about the meaning of these idioms. It's your turn to try to define exactly what they mean. And once you think you know the meaning, try and think of some examples to help you remember them. You might not be certain about the meaning, but look again at the text on the previous slide. Being able to deduce the meaning of new words and expressions from context is an important skill to develop. Okay, so pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, now let's go over your answers. So, over my dead body is used when we're extremely unhappy about something that someone plans to do, and we want to tell them that we'll do everything in our power to stop this from happening. If you look at my example, so you want to sell the family home over my dead body. Okay, so B, keep your hair on. This is an idiom that we use in informal situations, and we use it for telling someone not to get angry or upset about something. So, for example, if you've borrowed someone's car and damaged it, you could say, keep your hair on, it's only a little scratch on the car door. Next, to have a bone to pick with someone. This means that you want to talk to someone because they've done something that annoyed you. My example is, I've got a bone to pick with you. How dare you borrow my new phone without asking? I might also use this idiom if I thought that a friend had been gossiping about me, or if my housemate finished off all the milk from the fridge and didn't replace it. Can you think of any other examples? Lastly, to give someone a piece of your mind is an idiom that means you want to tell someone that you're angry with them and why. So my example is, there's no way I will agree to a pay cut. I'm going to give the boss a piece of my mind. In what situation would you give someone a piece of your mind? The English language uses literally thousands of idioms. Native speakers are able to use many of the most common ones without any difficulty. But how can you as a learner start building up your knowledge of idioms? Well, the first point to make is that you need to be realistic. Mastering idioms is difficult, and it's not going to happen overnight. So don't try to learn too many idioms at once. It just won't work, and you'll quickly forget them all. Instead, learn a couple at a time, and make sure you understand the meaning of each one well, and know how to use it properly. Secondly, you'll need to find some way of recording the idioms that you've learnt, so that you can come back to them at a later stage and review them. For me, the best way is using a traditional idioms notebook, but you could also use an idioms folder on your computer. It's whatever works for you, really. Idioms often follow particular themes, such as idioms connected to food or idioms about animals. So it's a good idea to record them according to these themes so that you can find them easily when you need to check the meaning or the usage. Thirdly, when you encounter a new idiom, don't just try to remember the meaning, but rather pay attention to the context too. This will help you to understand the idiom better and to remember it more easily, which is important. So let me give you an example. We talked about the idiom to have a bone to pick with someone. And I said that it means that you want to talk to someone because they've done something that annoyed you. So as well as recording the definition in your notebook, make a note of a meaningful example, something that's meaningful to you. So for me, I would write, I've got a bone to pick with you. You promised me that you would hand in your homework yesterday, and I haven't received it. This is a meaningful example to me as a teacher. So finally, when you record idioms, it can help to use simple mind maps or graphical representations of key themes. We're going to look a little bit more at this technique now and discuss how it can help you when it comes to learning idioms. Take a look at my mind map showing the 6 basic emotions. Most English exams require you at some point to talk or write about past experiences and feelings, and also to give your opinions and reactions to hypothetical scenarios. In English, native speakers often draw on idioms to do just this. So, knowing a range of idioms connected to emotions can help you prepare for your exam. First, let's zoom in and look at one of the most positive emotions, happiness. You won't be surprised to know that we have many idioms which we can use to talk about happiness. Can you think of any? Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Look at these examples that I came up with. Try to highlight or underline the idioms in each of these 4 sentences. When you've done that, use a dictionary to look up the exact meaning of each idiom. Yes, they are all connected to being happy, but there can be subtle differences between them. Okay, so now let's go over your answers. You can see that the idioms are highlighted in green. Did you identify them all correctly? Well, let's have a look at the specific meanings of these idioms. So, first of all, if you're over the moon about something, it means that you're really pleased or delighted about something good that's happened. Maybe you're over the moon about passing your driving test or winning a prize, for example. Okay, so the next one, we say that someone is full of the joys of spring when they seem very happy or enthusiastic and full of energy. I'd say that I was full of the joys of spring on my first day back at work after a relaxing holiday. We often use it in a humorous way when we're perhaps slightly surprised by someone's good mood. So next, the idiom to be on cloud 9 shows a stronger emotion than the previous one, to be full of the joys of spring. It means to be extremely happy and excited. It's almost a synonym for being over the moon. I think that I'd definitely be on cloud 9 if I won the lottery. And finally, if someone is a happy camper, it means that they're happy or satisfied with a particular situation. So, for example, I really wasn't a happy camper when I took my car to be repaired and it cost 3 times more than I expected. Okay, so now it's time to do a bit more practice. If you think back to our mind map, we said there were 6 basic emotions. Do you remember what they were? Look at these 4 examples of idioms expressing emotions. First, I want you to match each idiom to the correct emotion from our mind map. Then, use a learner's dictionary to check the exact definition of each idiom. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Let's take a look at the answers then. For most people, a wet, rainy weekend is a bit of a disappointment. So, as you might be able to guess, having a face like a wet weekend expresses sadness or unhappiness. My friend had a face like a wet weekend when she found out she hadn't got the job she applied for. Okay, so next, to go ballistic means to get extremely, uncontrollably angry about something. As a teenager, I remember my parents going ballistic at me once when I got home late. What about you? Have you ever gone ballistic? If something makes your skin crawl, it disgusts you. For example, people who mistreat animals make my skin crawl. It's a disgusting way to act. Finally, if something is a bolt from the blue, it means that something, usually something bad, happens unexpectedly. So it's a complete surprise. So, for example, losing my job would be a bolt from the blue, a huge and unpleasant surprise. What would come as a bolt from the blue to you? There's one really important rule to remember when using idioms. When you use one, it must be word perfect. That means you must get it absolutely correct, no mistakes. If you change the word order or change some of the words, even just a little, it will sound wrong, and it might even sound funny. Even small things like using singular or plural noun in the wrong place or using the incorrect article can be a big problem. Let me give you an example. We can't say, I have some bones to pick with you. The expression must be in the singular. I have a bone to pick with you. Also, another example, saying he's over a moon instead of he's over the moon might sound like a small mistake to you, but your listeners will really notice the mistake. Now it's time for you to practice finding mistakes in idioms. Look at these 7 sentences. They all feature idioms expressing happiness or sadness. Each sentence has one error in the idiom. Try to identify and correct each mistake. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Let's take a look at the correct answers. In number 1, the correct idiom is to be over the moon, not over the sun. In number 2, the idiom is to be down in the dumps, plural dumps. It means to be a bit depressed. In number 3, we must say on top of the world, not on top of the earth, even though the 2 words can be synonyms. In number 4, it's to be thrilled to bits. This is an example where we need to use the correct preposition. And again, to be thrilled to bits means to be extremely happy about something. In number 5, we must say the end of the world. We can't use the synonym finish. In number 6, the idiom is to look out of sorts, plural, so sorts, not sort. And finally, in number 7, the idiom is to make my day, not do my day. As you can see, even a small error can mean the difference between using idioms effectively and really drawing attention to your mistakes. So, we've reached the end of Idioms Part 1. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully, it's been a useful introduction to using idioms. Before we wrap up, I just want to give you one final tip. When it comes to idioms, what you need to remember is hear it, write it, use it. What that means is that you need to start by noticing new idioms when you come across them. Try to work out the meaning from the context, and then check by looking them up in a good dictionary. Make a note of it with an example, and then try to incorporate this idiom in your spoken and written English. Following this simple procedure every time you come across a new idiom will enrich your vocabulary hugely. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll take a look at idioms part 2. We're going to look at integrating idioms into your speaking. The ability to use idioms like a native speaker is important for your exam, but as we'll see, it's also a good goal to have in real life. Before you get started, it's a good idea to print out the PDF handout of this unit so you can easily make notes and underline key information during the tasks. Or, if you don't have a printer, you can download it to a different device and use a highlighting tool for note-taking. In the previous video, we talked about idioms, what they are, and why you need to learn them. But how are idioms used in speaking? Well, there are a number of ways. Firstly, we sometimes use idioms to show that we agree or disagree with what someone has said. It can be boring to always use the expression I agree or I disagree, so idioms bring variety and colour to this. We'll look at some examples of this shortly. We can also use idioms to emphasise a point, to comment on a person or a situation, and often to be humorous. We're going to look at idioms that serve all of these purposes during the course of this video. Okay, so imagine that one of your friends is complaining to you about another friend's behaviour. On the slide, you can see 3 idioms that you might use to respond to your friend. Take a look at each of the replies. Which do you think we use to show agreement, and which do we use to show disagreement? Think about when you would use each of these 3 idioms. It might help to use a learner's dictionary if you aren't sure. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Alright, so now let's go over the answers. So the first one, tell me about it, we use to show that we agree with the speaker. Tell me about it is an idiom that we use to say that we completely understand, that we feel exactly the same, or that we've had the same experience. Because it's an idiom, we don't mean it literally. You're not asking your friend to literally tell you about it or give you more information. It just means that you agree. So, for example, my uncle calls me and comments on how awful the weather has been recently. I say, tell me about it. Okay, so let's move on to the second idiom. I think you're barking up the wrong tree. Imagine a dog is chasing a cat. The dog thinks that the cat is hiding in the branches of a tree and waits at the bottom of the tree, barking at it. In actual fact, the cat has escaped over the garden wall and it's no longer in the garden. The dog is wasting its time looking in the wrong place. That's what this idiom means. You're telling someone that they've wasted their time or energy because they've made a mistake. Let me give you an example. So, I know Robert is a bit strange, but I'm sure it wasn't him who stole your wallet. You must be barking up the wrong tree. Okay, so now let's look at the last idiom. You took the words right out of my mouth. This is an idiom that we use to show agreement. Your friend has said exactly what you were thinking or what you were about to say. So another example, it's such a beautiful day today. We ought to go on a picnic. Yes, You took the words right out of my mouth. Now, let's have a look at the next task. In this task, imagine that you're doing the advanced speaking test and you need to express agreement or disagreement with your partner. Read the 7 sentences and choose the correct words to complete the idioms. Pause the video and press play when you've finished. Okay, so let's go over your answers. In number 1, the correct answer is torn. If you're torn about something, it means that you're not sure or you can't make up your mind between 2 options. So, for example, I'm torn about what to do tonight. I should stay home and have an early night, but some of my friends are planning a night out. In number 2, the answer is mouth. As we talked about in a previous slide, this idiom means that someone has said exactly what you were thinking. The answer to number 3 is differ. I beg to differ is a polite but assertive way of saying that you don't agree. For example, you think the government has made the right decision? I beg to differ. In my opinion, it could be disastrous. Number 4, the answer is minds. To be in 2 minds about something is a synonym to being torn about something. Okay, number 5, the answer is page. To be on the same page as someone means to understand something in the same way and therefore be able to work together harmoniously. So, for example, I might want to check with my colleague that we're both on the same page about how to deal with an issue at work. Number 6, the answer is fence. To be on the fence about something is another idiom that means you're undecided. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm on the fence about whether or not to go out for dinner tonight. Finally, number 7. Unlike some of the other idioms, the meaning of this one is probably quite clear. However, we have to use the word wrong. We can't use the synonym false. Okay, time for another practice activity. In this activity, you need to rearrange the words to form idioms. All of these idioms can be used to describe tense or difficult situations. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. All right, let's have a look at your answers. The first sentence is, I'm at loggerheads with my boss. To be at loggerheads with someone means to strongly disagree with someone or to be in an argument with someone. So, for example, as a teenager, I was often at loggerheads with my mum about all kinds of things. What about you? Have you ever been at loggerheads with your boss? In number 2, the answer is, he's just sitting on the fence. As I mentioned previously, to be or to sit on the fence means that you're undecided about something. Politicians often sit on the fence when they can't or don't want to pick a side in an argument. The answer to number 3 is, you're forever beating around the bush. To beat around the bush describes a situation where someone isn't able to say what they mean directly. They just never get to the point. So, for example, if I'm short of time, I might say to a colleague, please stop beating around the bush and say what you want to say. Number 4 is, we don't see eye to eye. This idiom describes a situation where 2 people disagree about something. For example, my best friend and I are usually on the same page, but we don't always see eye to eye when it comes to politics. The answer to number 5 is she's just playing devil's advocate. Do you know this idiom? If you play devil's advocate, it means you pretend to have a controversial opinion about something in order to encourage further discussion. Sometimes teachers have to play devil's advocate to get their students to think about something from a different point of view. Finally, number 6 is they're skating on thin ice. We use this idiom when we think someone is taking a risk and might live to regret the consequences. Mentioned briefly in Idioms Part 1, in English we have a lot of idioms connected to different animals. We often use these animal idioms to describe people. So, for example, if someone reveals a previously hidden talent, we can describe them as a dark horse. Tom can fly a helicopter and speaks 6 languages fluently. He's a real dark horse. Take a look at these 3 sentences. Can you identify the 3 animal idioms? Maybe you've heard some of them before. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Let's check the answers then. In sentence 1, Alice is a party animal, someone who really enjoys partying. What about you? Are you a party animal? Or do you prefer staying at home with a good book? In number 2, we can describe Mr. Patel as a cold fish. This idiom has quite a negative meaning. We use it about someone who's not particularly friendly or doesn't display much warmth. In sentence 3, we can describe Eva as an eager beaver. A beaver is a small animal with big front teeth that lives in rivers and builds dams. An eager beaver is the kind of person who is over-enthusiastic, always the first person to arrive at work in the morning and the first to volunteer for extra duties. Now it's time for another task. In this activity, I want you to read the paragraph and highlight or underline all of the animal idioms you can find. There are 5 in the text. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Alright, so you can see the 5 animal idioms highlighted in green. Did you find all of them? Now take a look at each of these animal idioms again. What do you think they mean? For each idiom, choose which you think is the correct definition, A or B. Look back at the text from the previous slide to give you some context. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, so let's go over your answers. Number 1, we use the idiom pigs might fly when we're talking about something that's never going to happen. For example, I have a friend who's always late when we meet up, but he tells me he'll be on time tomorrow. I tell myself, and pigs might fly. The second idiom, to get on someone's goat, means to annoy someone. For example, it really gets on my goat when people forget to turn off their mobile phones in the cinema. What about you? What gets on your goat? Number 3. The next one is to be like a bear with a sore head. As you might have worked out, this one means to be in a very bad mood. For example, my boss was like a bear with a sore head yesterday, shouting at people and complaining about everything. Number 4. To have a bee in your bonnet means to keep talking about something again and again because you have strong feelings about it. We usually use this idiom when we're a bit annoyed that the person keeps bringing up the same topic. For example, I'm avoiding my brother at the moment. He's got a real bee in his bonnet about people dropping litter on his street. I agree with him, but he's been going on about it all week. Finally, number 5. To let the cat out of the bag means to reveal a secret, especially by mistake. Imagine that you're organising a surprise party for a friend. It would be a real shame if someone let the cat out of the bag by accident. Here we looked at some animal idioms for talking about people. Now we're going to look at some more animal idioms, this time for commenting on specific situations. For example, when we talk about a small room, house or flat, we often say, there isn't enough room to swing a cat. Remember, this is an idiom, so we're not speaking literally. Take a look at these 3 sentences, which all contain animal idioms. Are any of them familiar? Have you come across any of them before? Try and work out which animals complete the idioms. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, now let's check the answers. The first idiom is to run around like a headless chicken, meaning to panic or to behave in a very disorganized way. The second idiom is to go to the dogs. We use this idiom when we want to talk about something deteriorating or becoming less successful. So, the restaurant used to be great, but maybe now the service is terrible and the food isn't very good. What about the third idiom? Did you guess it? If something goes at a snail's pace, then it means it's very slow. It might seem like your progress with idioms is going at a snail's pace, but be patient. Okay, let's try another practice activity. Look at the 5 sentences and try to comment on these situations using animal idioms. There are some clues provided for you in brackets. You might know some of these idioms already. If not, then a good learner's dictionary might help you to find the idiom you need. Remember to write the idioms in your notebook along with the examples. Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Okay, let's look at the answers. Number 1, Jed felt as sick as a parrot. This means to be extremely disappointed. So, for example, I would be sick as a parrot if I lost a winning lottery ticket, for example. Number 2, Ken's grandson got the lion's share of his money. As you might be able to guess, the lion's share of something is the largest part, or the majority. Number 3, I don't have a cat in hell's chance of getting the job. This idiom is used to describe something you have no chance of achieving. How about you? Can you think of something that you don't have a cat in hell's chance of doing? Number 4, I had butterflies in my stomach. It means I was very nervous. And finally, number 5, Rebecca has to watch her twins like a hawk, i.e. she has to watch the children very carefully without taking her eyes off them. We talked before about how when we use idioms, they must be word perfect. No mistakes, otherwise they just sound wrong. Look at these animal idioms highlighted in blue. Each idiom contains one error. Try to identify and correct each mistake. Again, a good learner's dictionary might help you if you're not familiar with the idiom. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, let's see if you have the correct answers. Number 1, we have the wrong animal. The idiom is to open up a can of worms. Number 2, the correct expression is like water off a duck's back. Number 3, this idiom is to quit something cold turkey, not hot turkey. Number 4, the correct answer is it's a dog's life. Number 5, it's just a small difference. The idiom is to do something until the cows come home, not go home. Finally, number 6, it's to get something straight from the horse's mouth, not ears. Okay, so we've established the correct idioms, but do you know what they all mean? Look at these questions and check your understanding of the 6 idioms. Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Okay, now let's check the answers. To open a can of worms is to start dealing with a situation that's going to cause a lot of problems for you. To go cold turkey is to quit something immediately, rather than to stop gradually. To talk about something till the cows come home is to discuss something for a long time. To get something straight from the horse's mouth is to get the information directly from the person concerned. The expression "it's a dog's life" means life is difficult and unpleasant. And to get butterflies in your stomach means to be very nervous about something. We've reached the end of Idioms Part 2. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it's been helpful and that you've improved your knowledge of idioms. Before we finish off, I just want to leave you with one final tip. Remember, idioms are for life, not just for your exam. While it's important to know a wide range of idioms for any advanced exam, their usefulness isn't limited to sitting exams. Being able to use a variety of idioms will enrich your understanding of everything you read, watch and listen to. Once you start paying attention to idioms, you'll be surprised how many you come across. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll take a look at Idioms Part 3. We're going to look at integrating idioms into your writing. As I've mentioned previously, before you get started, it's a good idea to print out the PDF handout of this unit so that you can easily make notes and underline key information during the tasks. If you don't have a printer, you can download it to a different device and use a highlighting tool for note-taking. As we talked about previously, when you come across a new idiom, the best plan is to check the meaning in a dictionary, then record the definition and an example in your idioms notebook. You can either use a traditional paper dictionary, or there are lots of good free online dictionaries available too. Let's have a look at what kind of information is available to you when you check an idiom in an online dictionary. Firstly, the dictionary entry will show you words that are interchangeable. So, for example, we talked previously about the idiom to beat around the bush, which means to avoid getting to the point in a conversation. We can say either to beat around the bush or beat about the bush. In this idiom, the words around and about are interchangeable. The dictionary might also give other practical pieces of information about how to use the idiom, such as showing if any of the words in the idiom are optional and can be left out. Thirdly, the dictionary will also often give you information about whether the idiom comes from British English or American English. A lot of idioms are in common use worldwide, but also a lot originate from a specific cultural context and might not be understood by speakers of other variations of English. So this can be very helpful information. Finally, the dictionary entry will also give you information about the register of the expression. What that means is in what kind of situation this idiom can be used. Is it something that's appropriate to be used in a letter to your boss? Or is it offensive or insulting? Is it something funny that you'd put in an email to a friend? Or is it something you'd expect to read in an old-fashioned novel? So now let's have a look at an example dictionary entry for the idiom to flog a dead horse. At the top you can see the idiom itself. Under that you can see that this idiom is a British idiom that's typically used in informal contexts. In brackets, the dictionary tells you that in American English they use a slightly different idiom. They say to beat a dead horse rather than to flog a dead horse. But the meaning and the usage is clearly the same. Underneath in bold, you can see the dictionary definition of the idiom. And under that, in italics, is a contextualized example showing you how to use the idiom in a sentence. So, as you can see, you can get a lot of very useful information from the dictionary. So get into the habit of checking the meaning when you come across new idioms. Okay, so now it's time for more practice. In this task, you're going to match the idioms in blue to the correct register on the left. You'll need to use the online Cambridge Learners Dictionary to help you with this. Remember that, as in most dictionaries, information about the register comes directly after information about whether the idiom is British or American English, right at the top of the dictionary entry. Remember to record any idioms that are new to you in your idiom notebook. Okay, pause the video and press play when you're ready. So, now it's time to check your answers. Did you get them all right? If not, take another look at the dictionary entries. We've looked at how the dictionary can give you really useful information about idioms, but how are idioms actually used in writing? Well, idioms are used frequently in informal English, such as emails, informal letters, chatting online, etc. Yet, we also use idioms in formal or academic styles of writing. But you don't want to use an idiom in the wrong context, such as using a slang idiom in a business report. That's why it's so important to get used to checking the register in the dictionary. Let's look first of all at idioms we use in informal situations. In fact, this category includes most, or the lion's share, of all idioms. The majority of idioms are colloquial, so they're used either in speaking or in informal writing. Using idioms accurately in these contexts will enrich your vocabulary and help you sound more like a native speaker, which is exactly what we want. Okay, time for another practice activity. In this task, you need to match the sentences on the left to the correct idiomatic responses on the right. Remember, idioms A to G in this task are all informal expressions, so make sure you record this important information in your idiom notebook. You can use an online dictionary to help you with the task if necessary. Now, pause the video and press play when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, now it's time to check your answers. In number 1, the answer is the more the merrier. The host thinks the party will be more fun if more guests are there. In number 2, time flies simply means that time often seems to pass very quickly. We sometimes use a longer version of the idiom, time flies when you're having fun. In number 3, we use the idiom, there's nothing to it. We use this when we want to say that something is really easy. In number 4, thanks a million simply means thanks a lot. Number 5, no way. This means that there's no chance that that's going to happen. I'd also say no way if someone invited me to go bungee jumping. In number 6, we use I could take it or leave it when we have no strong opinion about something. Basically, we're indifferent towards it. And finally, number 7, it's a small world. I once went on holiday to America and met someone from my village back in England. It really is a small world. So, we've looked at some informal idioms, but now let's take a look at idioms we use in formal writing. As you know, at higher levels of English, your writing needs to be accurate. That is, it shouldn't contain mistakes, and it needs to flow well. Using appropriate idioms can help you to organize and structure your writing at higher levels. However, it's extremely important to avoid using any informal, slang, or even offensive language. So, let's practice then. In this task, you need to read the 6 sentences, which each contain an appropriately formal idiom, highlighted in blue. Each idiom contains one mistake. Use a dictionary to identify and correct the mistakes. And remember to record any idioms that are new in your idiom notebook. Now, pause the video and press play when you're ready. Okay, let's check your answers. So, in number 1, the answer should be on balance, not of balance. We use this expression to show that we have considered both sides of something. So, for example, there are some things I don't like about my city, but on balance, it's a pretty good place to live. Number 2, the answer should be by and large. This is a synonym for on balance. In number 3, the answer should be in the main. So in this example, some people might have responded positively, but in general, the response has been negative. Number 4, the answer should be on the one hand. We use this expression for introducing a contrasting point. Number 5, the correct answer is last but not least. We use this idiom to show that the last point you're going to mention is just as important as everything that came before. And finally, number 6, in the final analysis. So it means after having considered everything carefully. Again, it's important to emphasize that making a mistake and using the wrong preposition in an idiom might not seem like a big issue to you, but the person who's reading your essay or your business report will definitely register it. We've already talked about why it's good to use idioms. Another reason is that it will help your writing stand out. What do I mean by that? Well, read the 2 example sentences on this page. Number 1, you're making the task more difficult than it is. Number 2, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. A mole is a small animal that digs tunnels underground, which leave behind small piles of earth. So you can probably work out that to make a mountain out of a molehill means to make something seem more difficult or more challenging than it really is. Using this idiom, as in sentence number 2, is a much more colourful or elegant way of expressing the exact same thing as in sentence number 1. But sentence number 2 is much more likely to impress an examiner. Okay, time for another task. In this activity, you need to read the sentences and try to deduce or work out the meanings of the idioms in blue. Seeing the idioms in context in a sentence should give you some clues to help you. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Right, let's check your answers then. Number 1. We use the idiom in a nutshell when we give someone a concise or short version of a story without unnecessary detail. So I'd use this expression if I needed to explain something, but I was short on time. Number 2. Once in a blue moon means only very occasionally. It makes sense that you would only see your brother once in a blue moon if he lived on the other side of the world in Australia. Number 3. Bear something in mind means that you need to consider or remember something, especially when you're making a plan or a decision. So in the example, maybe you need to bear in mind the repairs will be expensive because you'll need to budget for them. Number 4. The bottom line means the most important fact in a particular situation. So in sentence 4, however great or interesting the project might be, the bottom line is that there just isn't enough money for it. Number 5. Did you work it out from the context? If you go the extra mile, it means that you do more than has been asked of you. It has a very positive meaning. I always appreciate it when people in shops and restaurants go the extra mile for me. Number 6. A blessing in disguise. It's when a situation seems bad at first, but actually turns out to be something rather positive. Losing a job might be a blessing in disguise because you might end up in a better paid job that you prefer. Number 7. A case in point. We use this when we want to give an example of something that we've just been talking about. So in sentence 7, the sister is a good example of an adult who has learnt a new language. Finally, number 8. To think twice means to consider something carefully or to reconsider. Make sure you're doing the right thing in accepting the job. Okay, now let's practice using the idioms we've just discussed. In this task, you need to rewrite the underlined parts of each sentence using one of the idioms from the previous 2 pages. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, let's go over your answers then. So, number 1, the hotel staff went the extra mile to make us feel at home. Remember, go the extra mile means do more than is strictly necessary. So maybe they were extra polite or really helpful. Number 2, when travelling in the high season, bear the costs in mind. Or we could say, bear in mind the costs. Number 3, Einstein is a case in point. Number 4, unfortunately, they only came to visit us once in a blue moon. Number 5, the bottom line is that the leisure centre requires some major investment if it's to keep its doors open. Notice that the "that" in brackets is optional. Finally, number 6, that is an outline of my proposal in a nutshell. So, being able to upgrade your written English using idioms accurately and appropriately will be really beneficial in exams, but also in all situations where you're using written English. Okay, time for the next task. This time, you need to try and find an appropriate idiom using the word in brackets. All the idioms in this exercise are connected with impossible situations or controversial subjects. Again, you'll probably need to use a good learner's dictionary to help you. Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Let's check your answers now. Number 1. The idiom we need is that something is a double-edged sword. We use this to say that something comes with both positive and negative consequences. For example, I'd say that the internet is a double-edged sword when it comes to children. It brings with it so many educational possibilities, but also a lot of dangers. Number 2. The idiom we need here is that something is catch-22. What this means is that A can't happen until B has been achieved, but B also can't happen until A has occurred. Number 3. The idiom we're looking for here is it cuts both ways. For example, being famous cuts both ways. People admire you and want to meet you, but you lose your anonymity. Number 4. The correct idiom here is to be caught between a rock and a hard place. This is when you're in a situation where there is no good way out. For example, you hate your job, but you can't afford to quit. Number 5. The idiom is I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. This is a bit similar to the previous idiom, but the focus here is on whether or not you take a particular course of action. Finally, number 6, the idiom is the lesser of two evils. For example, you might be in this situation when you're voting in an election, where there's no candidate that you fully support, and you have to choose between the lesser of two evils. Okay, so now let's practice using the idioms we just discussed. In this task, read the 4 sentences and complete each gap with one of the idioms from the previous page. Note that there are only 4 sentences, so 2 of the idioms from the previous page will be unused. Think carefully about the context in each sentence to help you. Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Let's go over your answers. So, number 1, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. We could also possibly use the idiom they're caught between a rock and a hard place, but I think the first idiom is better in this case, as the focus is on the decision whether or not to ban fossil fuels. Number 2, the answer is the lesser of two evils. Number 3, it's a catch-22 situation. And finally, number 4, the restrictions could be a double-edged sword. So how many did you get right? Did you get all 4? So, we've reached the end of Idioms Part 3. I hope you feel more confident about incorporating idioms into your writing now. Thanks for taking the time to watch this series of videos on advanced idioms. Before we wrap up, I just want to give you one final tip. When it comes to idioms, context is everything. What do I mean? It can be very hard to understand an idiom without any context. Use dictionaries and the internet to find contextualized examples. This will help you to understand not just the meaning of the idiom, but will give you an idea of the register too. So thanks again for watching. Now it's time for you to do the practice activities and quizzes in this module. Remember to use the techniques we've just practiced. And I'll see you in the next video.
Well, that brings us to the end of the idioms module. I hope that you've enjoyed it and learnt a lot. Don't forget to do all the practice activities and quizzes for each part to consolidate everything that we've covered in the videos. Remember, keep using your idioms notebook. Make a note of all the new idioms that you come across, whether it's in the course of your studies or while you're watching your favourite TV series. Write them down and then refer back to your idioms notebook frequently. And also try to use these idioms yourself in class or in your daily life. That really is the best way to become adept at using them. Remember too that as important as idioms are for the advanced exam, it's not just about passing your exams. Being able to use idioms well will improve your communication in general so much. Okay, so just in case I don't see you again, good luck with the advanced exam. We hope you do really well.